first scream didn't sound human. It tore through the quiet morning like something breaking, shattering the peaceful rhythm of clinking coffee cups, rumbling engines, and the soft golden sunrise stretching over the old roadside diner. Everything had been calm just seconds before. Steam curled lazily from the bikers' mugs, sunlight flickered across chrome and leather, and the Hells Angels, those rough-looking men people usually avoided, laughed and traded stories that no one ever bothered to ask about. But that scream froze the world. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks clattered against plates, and even the engines seemed to go silent as every head turned toward the parking lot. That was when they saw her. Tiny, frantic, a little girl in a red dress sprinting across the asphalt with boots far too big and hair sticking to her tear-stained face. She stumbled, caught herself, and kept running, her voice cracking with fear as she pointed back down the road. Something inside every hardened biker twisted at the sight. Something deep, instinctive, human. A child in danger. A cry you couldn't ignore. If you believe in kindness, if you believe in second chances and in people who still step forward when everyone else looks away, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Loom, because what happened next is the kind of story that reminds us there is still good in this world. The little girl collapsed to her knees in front of the group, breathless and shaking. Her tiny hands trembled so violently that the sunlight flickering off her fingers looked like sparks. Though no one else moved, one man did. A broad-shouldered biker in his late 30s whose vest carried the unmistakable red and white patch of the Hells Angels. His name was Mason Cole. He had been through enough in life to grow calluses on both his knuckles and his heart, yet something about this child broke straight through them. He knelt down slowly so he wouldn't frighten her, the leather of his jacket creaking as he steadied her shoulders. She tried to speak, but her sobs came in jagged bursts, pointing again toward a cluster of old trailers hidden by overgrown trees. The words she managed to get out made half the men flinch. Someone was hurting her mother. Badly. Mason didn't hesitate. He stood up so fast his chair toppled behind him. His jaw clenched, and he jerked his head toward two of his brothers, Tank and Ryder. No questions, no doubts. They moved like men with a mission carved into their bones. Engines roared to life, the ground trembling under the power of 3 Harleys ripping toward danger. Dust spiraled into the morning sky as the girl was gently carried inside the diner, wrapped in a biker's oversized leather jacket that swallowed her small frame. She pressed her palm to the cold window, eyes wide and unblinking, watching the red taillights disappear down the sunlit road. Minutes dragged out like hours. The diner had never been that silent. Even the truckers at the gas pumps stood frozen, listening for something, anything. 5 minutes, then 6. Then a faint echo came drifting back through the trees. Not engines, not laughter, chaos. A woman's cry, hoarse and terrified. Angry shouts, the unmistakable sound of violence being stopped with force. Inside that broken trailer, Mason and his brothers walked into a nightmare that would stay with them for years. The door hung crooked on its hinge. Glass crunched under their boots. And in the dim, dusty light, a woman cowered against the wall, her face bruised, her lips split, her arms raised to shield herself from a man towering over her with rage dripping off him like sweat. His fists were already bloody. A broken bottle glinted in his hand. He didn't even notice the bikers until Mason grabbed his wrist mid-swing and twisted with a force that made bone crunch loudly enough to echo across the room. The bottle smashed to the floor as Tank and Ryder pinned the man down effortlessly. Mason barely said a word. He didn't need to. The woman collapsed into a sobbing heap, sliding down the peeling wallpaper as sunlight caught the tears on her cheeks. Mason's expression softened instantly, the storm in his chest settling long enough for him to crouch beside her. He asked if she was all right, though his voice trembled with held-back fury. She managed a weak nod. Outside, faint police sirens grew louder, finally answering the violence that had erupted hours before. Mason knew someone must have called it in, but he didn't care about credit or consequences. He cared about the child at the diner with fear in her eyes. When the police finally arrived, the bikers didn't flee. They stood in the sunlight-streaked yard, hands raised, calm and silent. The little girl, Hannah, ran straight into Mason's arms as soon as she saw him. She clung to his leg like it was the only solid thing left in her world. Her mother, Carla, was escorted out gently by one of the officers. With her voice shaking, she told the police everything. Her attacker was her ex-boyfriend, recently released from jail, who had tracked her down before dawn. She had planned to run again, but he found them too fast. The officers eventually hauled him away, thrashing and cursing, but no one paid attention to him anymore. All eyes were on the mother and daughter reunited in trembling relief. Mason quietly lifted Hannah onto his bike and gently placed the too big helmet back on her head. Then he drove her back to the diner at a slow, steady pace, her tiny arms wrapped tightly around him as if she could hold herself steady against the world again. When they returned, the entire diner crowd stood waiting. Conversations halted. Even the wind seemed to pause. The truckers who earlier hadn't dared move now stared in silence. And when they saw Mason carrying Hannah, safe and whole, with Carla walking behind him, alive, bruised, but free, the whole world seemed to exhale. Carla cried as she thanked them again and again, her voice breaking with disbelief that anyone had come at all. Mason simply nodded toward her daughter, reminding her gently that Hannah had been the one brave enough to run for help. The diner's owner came out with blankets, warm food, and hot coffee. One by one, the Hell's Angels removed their jackets, those patches people feared so much, and laid them around the mother and daughter like armor. Even the police looked away respectfully, sensing something sacred in the moment. In the days that followed, the story spread through town like wildfire. People who had never spoken to bikers before now crossed parking lots just to shake their hands. The tough men who rarely stayed in one place found themselves welcomed into a small, grateful community. And Mason, who had always preferred the road to roots, returned every Sunday morning to check on Carla and Hannah with a bag of groceries or a warm meal. Sometimes he didn't bring anything but time, just sitting at the diner with a warm cup of coffee, listening to Hannah's laughter echo through the booths. Weeks passed, then months. Winter melted into spring. Carla and Hannah slowly rebuilt their lives with help from neighbors, strangers, and the very bikers they once would have been warned to avoid. One bright morning, as frost finally left the fields, Hannah came running up to Mason holding a crumpled piece of paper covered in crayon drawings. She had drawn a row of motorcycles under a bright sun, a little girl in a red dress, and a man kneeling down to help her. She beamed as she handed it to him. Mason stared at it for a long, quiet moment before folding it gently and tucking it into his vest like it was the most precious thing he'd ever owned. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Loom. Your support helps these stories reach even more people who need a reminder that kindness still exists in unexpected places. Before you go, tell us in the comments where you're watching from so we can appreciate you personally.